Okay, we're live. You're listening to Being Humanist with Lee and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Lee.
I'm Paul.
And we're live.
Episode 4.
Episode 4. We made it to 4.
October 20th.
While it might not be consistent on 4 shows every day, the same week or whatever, it's happening. It's still happening.
Yeah.
And we have lots of stuff to cover this time.
A few things.
Okay, so we have some things that we've picked out, and then I have to talk about a conversation I had with my father yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Should be interesting.
It'll be fun, especially because I found out that my father is a creationist. I mean, I knew he believed in God, but excuse me as I try to fix my mic.
So not only does he believe in God, which is, that's pretty well common.
Yes.
But he's a creationist.
Mm-hmm.
He's an evolution denier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somewhat. I think he believes that some evolution happens, but I think he believes that it's still creationism. But we can get into that later.
Okay.
So, what should we start off with, sir?
I don't know. Well, speaking of creationism, one of its biggest touters, the owner of the Creation Museum, Ken Ham, kind of pissed us off this week, didn't he? Or was it last week? It may have been last week, but
I think it was last week.
Either way, it's worth mentioning. Well, Mr. Ken Ham, that genius, he also runs AnswersInGenesis.org, a laughable site which basically tries to fit 10 pounds of monkey crap in a 5-pound bag. If you know what that, if you're familiar with that expression, he tries to fit the Bible with all that we know now. He tries to keep the Bible relevant and say, oh no, this doesn't contradict anything the Bible says. Basically goes through, but he still completely denies evolution happened at all.
Which might include why your description there would say that if you look at the website, which is AnswersInGenesis.org, the top of the website has a 1-to-1 logo, believing it, defending it, and proclaiming it. So basically he's trying to take everything that we've learned from science and put it next to something in the Bible.
Pretty much, yeah. And some things that just don't fit, he'll just flat out deny. Like evolution. If it doesn't jive with what the Bible says, he'll just deny it regardless of all the evidence that's in his face available to him, which he has read. He's familiar with it, but he is so hell-bent on the idea that creationism is the only way it could possibly be that in one ear out the other. It doesn't matter to this guy.
So he's an incredible person.
He sure is.
And he did something that really pissed you off. What did he do?
Well, he decided he was going to put up a billboard, and it happens to be in a couple of the most liberal areas of the United States, probably not, especially San Francisco and Los Angeles, and let's see, looks like New York City, San Francisco Bay Area, and he's also planning to put billboards up in Los Angeles and in Hollywood. But the billboard basically just says, to all our atheist friends, thank God you're wrong. Then he puts up his logo for Answers in Genesis, and his when asked about this, this is what he had to say. In a friendly way, we want to reach out to people in secularized parts of the country and share the hope we have in Christ. Atheists live in a world of ultimate meaninglessness and purposelessness. But the good news is that God sent His Son to offer the free gift of salvation. There is purpose and meaning in life, and we thank God for that.
Yeah, not happy.
No, and just first off, what an arrogant prick. You know, I mean, who is he to decide the degree of meaning that a non-believer holds in their life? Who does he think he is, you know? Just because we don't pattern our lives on hearsay, unverifiable claims to knowledge that he claims to have, our lives are purposeless because of this. Because we don't think we know something. We're not claiming to know something there's no proof for, yeah. And as you know, I'm a former Christian. I've become an atheist, and I have to say I have more meaning in my life than I ever had as a Christian. Basically because I now realize that human beings aren't poor, helpless, innately worthless creatures that can only truly have worth through salvation made possible by a mythical megalomaniac's nonsensical self-sacrifice, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just absurd. But anyway, since deconverting, I've developed more compassion for other human beings as a result of the self-worth that I have gained from not relying on this stifling, you're a piece of shit dogma. I've lost almost 100 pounds, you know. And that comes from realizing, hey, I've got one life. This is the one life I'm fortunate enough to have. Mm-hmm. So let's make the best of it. And I found a path of interest. I've always kind of floated around not knowing what I wanted to do, and this new interest in science has led me to decide I'm going to pursue a degree in biology.
Sorry, I have to fix Keith's mic. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, my wife and I, our relationship's better than ever. I care about education, my fellow man, no matter who they are, where they came from. And when I was a Christian, I hate to say it, but I was fat, unmotivated, a bit misogynistic, right. A little homophobic.
Yeah.
I was a Midwestern stereotype. And I hate to say it, but living in this area, it's not actually too far from the mark. I mean, we're swimming in that culture. And I hate to say it, but this is a stereotype that is pretty dead on for most, maybe not most, but a good portion of people in this area of the country.
A good portion of people who follow the same belief and are closed off from the rest of the world, in a sense.
Right. And this Ken Ham jackass, I mean, it seems like his purpose is basically, in whether he knows he's doing it or not, sometimes I think he does, because he's making a lot of money off of this bullshit. But he's basically just creating mindless drones that live inside a stifling and intolerant worldview, discourages free inquiry, acceptance of fact, encouragement of critical thought. They don't care about that. And apparently that means I'm going to hell, because I don't buy into that bullshit. And you know what? If the punishment for not taking his path is hell, then give me hell, which of course I don't believe exists. But I'd rather burn for an eternity than be an anti-intellectual, regressive scumbag, such as the likes of Ken Ham.
I mean, I have to say, I've known you for 10 years now, and I have witnessed a pretty incredible transformation between you and your wife. In fact, I can honestly say that between the fact that both of you have completely changed the way that you view the world, your relationship seems to be better. It's been a pretty cool transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, and I'll say it again, the day that it wasn't really like, it was a gradual thing, but the day that I finally realized, I don't think I believe in this stuff anymore. Aside from my wedding day, that was the best day of my life. It was the most liberating feeling I've ever had when I realized, hey.
I was thinking about your wedding the other day, actually.
Yeah.
And the fact that you got married in the Catholic Church.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And I don't know. I was just thinking about the fact, I was there. It was probably the third, maybe fourth time I had ever seen you in my life. I was at your wedding.
Yeah.
And I remember the reception. I remember you guys, your first dance was to Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. And I'm like, you know what? I think I found some good people here.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting to have seen that transformation over the last 10 years. And I hate to say, and I think we kind of covered this in the first show a little bit, our origins or whatnot, but it's been interesting to see the transformation. And at times, I mean, I know even at that point in time that I was very skeptical, and it was kind of something I kept to myself. I think over the years, it started to come out a little bit, and we've even had one particular friend who tried to make me feel bad about it or something. I'm not quite sure exactly what his goal was. Chris.
Oh, okay.
But I just remember him, we had a conversation in private, and then all of a sudden it wound up being, well, hey, Lee's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God at one of your parties. I remember thinking,
Oh, so
it's out now.
Blew the cover. Blew the cover in front of a bunch of people.
Which I suppose, in a sense, maybe I needed that.
Well,
maybe it opened the conversation up, and people started to wonder.
We've known that this entire group from the beginning, and no one ever abandoned you. So I guess let's give at least the Christians that we have in our group of friends a little bit of credit for not being like the fundamentalist type. I mean, not all Christians are like that. It's just unfortunate that they still cling to it. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't believe it. I'm sure they do, but they're living life one way. It's basically like they've accepted the modern world as one way, but they still want to hang on to this ancient method of
ancient text that was written for people who didn't have anything to cling to, if you will, something to prove or to help them understand the world around them that they couldn't find meaning to.
And I think a lot of it is it's comfort, because they want to feel like somebody is looking out for them, like in moments of hopelessness, helplessness, whatever you want to say. They feel like there's something they can reach out to that's just going to make their life infinitely better. And there's probably some kind of a placebo effect that goes on, almost like meditation, that really does make them feel. And I can attest to that, actually. I mean, there are times in my life when I was still a believer, that I would reach out to God and I would feel better, but I would know in the back of my mind that nothing had really changed. Just so in a sense, I can't fault them, but I just wish that they would consider looking into reality, I guess.
The thing is I don't know that there can be any one single person, whether following a belief, a Christian religious belief. There's no way that you couldn't have had a moment where you questioned what you believe.
I think it's just normal for everyone. I mean, there may be a few exceptions. We don't know. We're not in the minds of everyone, but I do think it's pretty well known that it's a common thing to have doubts. And what was it? I had a thought on prayer.
Did you have a brain fart?
Yeah. Well,
I wish brains could make a noise when they farted. I'm just saying.
I just think that there's also the thing of familiarity. I mean, that's all you've ever known, and that becomes part of your core being. And I think the main thing is you have to, when you come to the realization that, hey, I don't need some outside force to drive my life for me. I drive my own life. I can make things good for myself. I don't need anything to do that for me. When you realize that, and you realize that, yeah, maybe I am on my own, but that's a good thing. That's the ultimate form of independence. People in the United States tout independence all the time, but they are slaves to an idea.
That's that's a good point.
I mean, basically, the government model of the United States is in direct contradiction with the Christian religion, because there is no freedom in the Christian religion. There is no independence. You are supposed to be following these rules.
You're fearful of. I mean, you're a God-fearing person.
Yes, and you can't question these rules.
That in itself, a God-fearing person, that statement alone, to me, just like, why?
Yeah.
why would you fear something that you take such?
You're exactly, and it's just, and to think about, and to actually believe that you were created by this ultimate being, and you're supposed to be afraid of him because he's going to throw you into a pit of fire to burn and suffer in agony for all of eternity, even though he didn't have to do that. There was a thing up here. It was like an internet meme up on Facebook or somewhere I saw not too long ago. It was probably our friend Sean that put it up.
Oh, probably. I can see that.
It had something like where God was telling Adam and Eve, he's like, you can have anything you want in the Garden of Eden, but don't eat from that tree because that'll let you know what's wrong and right. You'll know what's wrong and right after you eat there. But I do expect you to know that it's wrong to eat there, even though you don't know what's wrong and right now. So they had no concept of wrong and right, but he expected them to know it's wrong to eat there. It's just so many paradoxical things going on, and people don't think about it. They don't want to. They just want to be oblivious, and I don't think most people have the ill intent that fundamentalists do as a Christian, but I just want to make it understood why we have a problem with.
Exactly.
It's not the belief we have a problem with. It's what they do with the belief. I think we've said that, and
yeah. Although I can almost go to, I have a problem with the belief in itself too, because it's what that belief is based off of.
True. Yeah. See, I haven't gotten to the point where I just actually. I mean, if you want to believe that, that's fine, but
yes.
just don't shove it down everyone else's throat. And that, I guess we could be
accused of doing the
same thing. But what we want is fairness. We don't want one person's ideology to dominate. Like, I'm fine with all of these different religions because we have freedom of religion in the United States. We have, and that does include not having a religion. But we can't have our lawmakers taking the values of one particular religion and making those the basis for our lawmaking. And also, just think about it. Think of the favoritism Christianity enjoys in this country. Like, our national holidays are all Christian-based holidays, like Christmas and Easter. I mean, these are national holidays that are based in Christian. You don't have that for the Jews. You don't have that for the Muslims. I mean, I'm not saying you should. You shouldn't. I'm not saying we should take away Easter and Christmas as holidays. I have no problem with that, obviously, but
maybe it'd be better if they went back to their originations.
Their pagan origins.
Which people are like, what? Christmas wasn't a pagan, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, actually, it was adopted because the Christians' conquests, they defeat a people to spread the word, and they take their spoils and they have them they take their holidays and turn them into a Christian holiday. That's how it's been done.
But, I mean, we realize that that it's not fair for people, for one religion's ideology to be the dominating, basis of our lawmaking. But there are some people who still don't realize that, and I think they are becoming the minority. For instance, this House stenographer that flipped out on the floor during a vote, saying she didn't actually say she was bringing a message from God. She just kind of blurted shit out. And you would think that, okay, I'm like, yeah, she's nuts, and nobody's going to deny that, and blah, blah, but I should have known who was going to come to her defense. Who is going to come to this lunatic's defense because of the content of her rant?
Should we tell them, or should we play the audio and let them figure it out on their own?
Yeah, just go ahead and play it.
Okay, just so you know, we got this from the rawstory.com, which is fantastic on finding the good stuff.
Invaluable tool.
So here we go. I'm going to play this clip. It's 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes.
left and right about how Obamacare is just making it harder for many. But you know, in other mindset of news, you know when you're at a game and the streaker runs out in the field in the middle of like a boring inning or something?
During the Oscars.
Exactly. Well, during, in between the votes last night, Senate floor, the stenographer had
not a streaker, fully clothed.
Not a streaker, fully clothed, but had an outburst that has everybody talking. Listen to this.
The Constitution would not have been written by Freemasons. They go against God.
Well, that is Diane Reedy, who went to the speaker's chair, as you saw, and she was saying, praise to God, Jesus Christ. She went on to say something in reference to Freemasons, and also seemed to say something about House being divided.
She did. I just saw an email from somebody who said, who identified themselves as a minister. Keep in mind, she was then, taken into custody, not arrested, we don't believe, but she was then taken to a local hospital for a mental evaluation. This minister just emailed, it was not a mental episode. What she was doing is known as an exercise of the gifts of the Spirit, where she had brought a warning and a message from God regarding the activity he felt there in the house. Somebody who works in the house every day is Chad Pergram. He knew who she was right away.
I know her, and I've talked to her many times over the years. There were a lot of references about God, during her rant from the dais, and when they pulled her out into the hall there and tried to take her down the elevator. She's very religious, and people were very concerned here. There's a lot of people here on Capitol Hill who talk with her. She always has a smiling disposition. And, we see a lot of strange things on Capitol Hill. It's not strange that we see a protest outside the Capitol. Once in a while, there's a protest inside the House chamber. But to have a protest in the middle of such a big vote, as the vote was coming to a close, and no less for it to be someone who works here, I don't think I've ever seen that in all the years that I've covered Capitol Hill.
Here's another email from somebody. They say, amazingly, this religious and obviously a sweet lady gets fed up and speaks her mind, something we all have tried to do. She brings up our dear Lord, and she gets a mental evaluation.
Sure.
I think it should be the other way around. And then this person has a list of people who should be checked out.
Well, she hopped behind the speaker's chair and started screaming in the middle of a vote. You do have to pull her away.
Well, sure. And look, we've had incidents in the past which certainly require some security measures to be taken, and we're thankful for those. But, who knows? Maybe she just saw something that didn't seem right, and mounting frustrations and tensions brought it out of her.
Shut up, Elizabeth. It's kind of bad. This is like the second or third time that Brian Kilmeade, who is known as the dumbest person on the Fox and Friends panel,
To say something,
has said the most reasonable thing. At the end there, he said, well, she was going off on the floor. You had to remove her. You can't let her do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And here's Steve Ducey. That was my pun for the day. But Steve Ducey immediately defending her. And as soon as, a minister said it was okay. So a minister, he says what she was doing wasn't worthy of mental evaluation. So if a minister said it, of course, he's an expert on these matters. So, we have to go with that, she was really just receiving a message from God.
Yeah.
Is this 2013? Or is this 1350? I don't know.
It's amazing what people will believe in certain times, I'll tell you that. That's impressive. It's funny to watch.
Yeah.
It's like, are you serious? This woman's freaking out.
Now, to defend the lunatic, she actually brought up a good point about the Founding Fathers, how they were,
oh, yes.
They were not, at least she's a fundamentalist Christian that can admit that the Founding Fathers were not Christians. Some of them were, but the ones that were really highly involved in this, they were deists.
The ones that everybody talks about.
Yeah.
The most important ones, the George Washington, Thomas Jefferson.
And they were Freemasons. She's not wrong about any of that.
Ben Franklin.
Yeah. So she's that is accurate. And you know what? Just after saying that, she really is sticking to her guns on her religious convictions without lying. Like,
yeah.
She's not trying to revise history while still sticking to her guns. She recognizes that this is not a Christian nation and never was. She wants it to be one. So she's voicing her opinion. I think she's still fucking nuts for voicing that opinion. But at the same time, she's not she's not wrong about the origins of this country.
I have to admit, when I first heard this, I thought to myself, what's she doing? This doesn't sound like a typical fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah.
She's saying things that I understand as truth.
I know.
Wait, what? Am I missing something here?
It's like, I completely disagree with her beliefs, obviously. But after listening to it one more time, I guess I just had that moment that dawned on me that I actually might have a little bit more respect for her than I did in the beginning. I don't respect her beliefs at all. But I do respect her for not trying to revise history like most of the Christians in our country do today.
Yeah, like Sarah Palin.
Yeah, she tries to say... I mean, these people will say that this nation was founded on Christian principles. No, it wasn't.
No.
The Treaty of Tripoli says so.
Why is that still an argument today?
Because
Well,
we're talking about people that deny evolution.
Which, later on, I'm going to get to this stuff, because...
Yeah.
But
we're talking about people that deny fact. In the face of fact, in the face of evidence, there are many things that these people just... I mean, they will totally throw out the window just because of their beliefs. I mean, hell, that's extremely dangerous. That's a dangerous way to... And like I said, I really do think that the population that is part of that mindset is decreasing. And I think it is very fringe now. I just don't think we realize it as much because of where we live.
Yeah. Man, I don't know whether I should chime in on this now or wait till I get to my section at the end. I'll just wait.
Yeah, let's wait.
Let's wait.
And speaking of evolution, another good segue here. I don't think there's much more we can add to that. We just thought it was funny, and unless you've got anything.
No, I'm good. It was an interesting thing that popped up, and it's something to review further, I think, on your own.
Yeah.
If you get the chance. So just kind of check out the House Stenographer Flips Out and brings message from God. Just look for that. Google that.
Yeah.
You'll find it. There's no way you won't find it. So we can go to something a little bit more fun. Talking about one of our heroes, one of our mentors, if you will, though we've never met the guy.
Absolutely.
One of the smartest men, I think. Maybe, I don't know if I want to go as far as say the Einstein of our day, maybe the Carl Sagan of our day.
Yeah, the Einstein of our day, I wouldn't say that.
He's he doesn't really go on much in his talks about religion and whatnot, but he's a huge proponent for science and keeping science in the classroom. And if you haven't figured it out by now, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he has a radio show called Star Talk, which I am now I subscribe to the podcast. I've been listening to it.
I need to.
It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. They're about 45 minutes long, so it's reasonable to get through the whole thing. And he does a really good job. They have really interesting topics and stuff to go for. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he runs into, well, let's just say he runs into young Earth creationism, and he has something to say about it.
Right.
Do you have anything to add before I hit play?
No. I mean, well, are we going to play this whole 4 minute and some...
I don't know. What should we do?
Maybe just play a little bit of it, and we can pause and talk in between.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
He writes, I visited the Creation Museum purely out of a sense of mystified curiosity. The recorded narration in their planetarium claimed that contemporary astrophysics predicted that certain stars were older than the known age of the universe and cited this problem as evidence against science and for young Earth creationism. I think this was a real astrophysical problem for a while, but has since been outmoded by better models of stars. I was hoping Neil might tell me a little bit more about the problem and its solution.
Which problem? The problem that a creation museum exists at all?
I think the problem that
Which problem?
is that a creation museum, I think what it is it's pointing to some outdated model of understanding science.
Yes, okay, so let's unpack all of that.
Yeah.
So actually I have nothing specifically against a creation museum.
Sure.
Just keep it out of the science classroom.
Right.
We live in a free country, people could say whatever you want about whatever. That's
just
what,
like the Batman Museum is not accurate
that's
historically.
That's what it means to
but
be
it's fun.
free, right? Just don't confuse it with actual science.
Yeah.
So back, when was it? In the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
there were measurements, this is before Hubble settled all these questions, the Hubble telescope, that is. We had measurements of the oldest stars, and they were coming in, 18 billion years old, and measurements of the age of the universe, that was coming in at about 15 billion years old. So it was an unsolved problem in astrophysics.
I don't know, it sounds like God exists when you say that.
You can't be older than your mother, okay? If you want to get a terrestrial version of that. Each of those that was data obtained by completely independent, separate methods.
Right.
So I was quite happy that they were in the same ballpark, right? 15 billion, 18 billion.
Yeah.
It's a few billion here or there. Cosmically speaking, that difference is small. It's not one that's 1,000 times older than the other.
Yeah.
Then somebody's not doing something right, okay?
Right.
So a few billion years on 15 billion years was a problem to be solved, but it made much sexier headlines to talk about than
So scientists were like, this all seems pretty reasonable. With more accuracy, we'll figure it out.
That's how we were dealing with it in a thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh my gosh, how did you do? Because what they weren't considering what we call error bars. Error bars are you make a measurement, and what is the uncertainty of that number? The uncertainty in the 15 billion year age of the universe was plus or minus 2 billion years. You see these error bars now, these uncertainty numbers in election polls, right?
Yeah.
So they became familiar to people. What is the margin
now
of error?
people understand that it's like, maybe it's 13 billion, maybe it's 17.
Maybe it's 17, and now you have the 18 billion year old star that could be, that was 18 plus or minus 2. Yeah. So the overlap in that is
fine.
It's fine.
Perfectly reasonable. So the Creation Museum uses science from the 90s to prove that science is wrong.
Well, right, it's all wrong. And the fact is that in a young universe, as what is put forth by creation folk, that is a universe that's not, it's 6,000 years, no more than 10,000. It's in the thousands, not billions.
Right.
So these are apples and oranges going on here. So, by the way, it's possible to have an error bar, an uncertainty range that is completely out of whack.
I think
that would mean there's a systematic error in your.
Yeah. Go Neil.
Yeah.
This is a guy who doesn't really go after the religious aspect of things, but he's making a very good point right here.
Oh, yeah. And I obviously agree with everything he says there. He's very diplomatic.
Yes.
And he says creationism is fine as long as you don't call it science. And I agree with half of that. Don't call it science. But I don't think it's fine, because I think it's just you're willingly ignoring something that is you're willingly ignoring reality.
Right.
Now, if you want to, this is the thing. There are plenty of Christians out there that still believe that God created the universe and God created Earth and blah, 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 but they don't deny these scientific theories that have overwhelming evidence to support them as being true.
Right.
They say, okay, well, we can work with that. Well, maybe it was God-guided, blah, blah, blah. But creationists are actually completely throwing these theories that are backed by mounds and mounds of evidence over years and years of testing the theories and actually, showing that they work. They're throwing it all out the window. It's like, no, none of that's true. Earth's 6,000 years old, 10,000 years old, whatever. I mean, it varies from creationist to creationist, but no, none of that happened. Bible says it didn't. It didn't. Yes, and when Einstein worked out the theory of relativity, and we got the whole speed of light thing, we kind of started realizing, oh, hey, this place is pretty old.
I just wish people would think for themselves, as opposed to. It can be so frustrating sometimes. Yeah, are we? Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, and it's. I agree with Neil. It's not science, and I think in most cases, and I actually think it seems in every case where this thing goes to court, Fortunately for us, these creationists
Yes.
have consistently lost the case.
Which is probably getting overwhelmingly frustrating.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I mean, and you just got these podunk states like Kansas doing it, and Texas.
Oklahoma,
Texas
Texas.
is always trying it, and I'm surprised it's never happened here in Indiana. But
It's going to.
ugh, I didn't want to hear that.
I mean, it's going to be. There's things happening, obviously, in Indiana, and I think that there are people ready to fire back.
Yeah.
I mean, I do consider us to be in a place of. So many people talk about wanting to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, these people here are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we have to remember these people here are our friends and family.
Yeah.
But that is what that is, and people want to leave, and then you're forgetting the fact that if you leave, this place will never get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we've got these places like our home state of Indiana, Kansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we could probably lump in Mississippi. Most of those southern.
The Dover trial was in Pennsylvania, and
Oh yeah,
Pennsylvania's tried to challenge science standards since then. Even I mean, they just didn't learn from that case. Nobody, the entire country should have learned from Dover v. Kitzmiller that it's just not worth it because you're going to lose. A public education system, you can't.
It's in the Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, we have private schools. We have religious private schools for this. If you want to teach your kids bad science, fine. But pay the extra money to do that. These public schools are filled with children of all walks of life, and you do not have a right to come in there and tell these children that do not share your worldview that this is the way it is. It doesn't need to stand up next to science, next to evolution, teach the controversy, whatever. No, that doesn't work. It has no place in there. It has no place in the classroom. We've said this before. It's a hypothesis that cannot move beyond the hypothesis stage. You can't test it. You can't run experiments to... It doesn't do anything to further science, like evolution has furthered medicine. It's actually been a beneficial theory to mankind. I mean, but intelligent design, creationism, whatever you want, I mean, it's the same thing. Intelligent design is just a fancy way of...
It's a clever way to put creationism.
Yeah.
And it's something, in that Dover case that you speak of, it's if they actually showed in the documentary that they went back and found the original notes of when they were trying to get this thing moving,
Mm-hmm.
that they were using creationism in the beginning, but they changed the word or phrase to intelligent design to
Yeah.
hide it.
And there was actually a typo somewhere in the...
Somebody didn't, they put creationism in between intelligent design, I think.
Pre-intelligent designism or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big mistake on their part, but it's just, intelligent design basically states that all of these different species spontaneously popped into existence at different times throughout history. They didn't evolve from common ancestor. They didn't. They just popped into being, basically.
There's a really good, fun argument right there that we could make. There's a similar thing happening, right? Because when you think about the idea of something just popping out,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, whoop, there's a new creature, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's nutty. It's about as nutty as the idea of somebody saying, well, if we come from apes, then we should be able to watch an ape give birth to a human.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It's almost the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're not gonna see that. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. Now, and obviously, now popping in and out of existence on the quantum scale that's different, because we really do have particles and things like that do pop in and out of existence. There's actually no such thing as, if you think about it that way, there's no such thing as nothing. Like, these on the quantum level, things are constantly popping in and out of existence, like these little particles. It's quantum mechanics is the most impossible thing to grasp, but I do at least know that part of it. So that actually supports the theory that basically Lawrence Krauss uses quantum mechanics, and so does Stephen Hawking, to say you don't need a God for all of this. You don't need it. And this is how it's plausible. A Universe from Nothing by Lawrence Krauss is a good book to read on that. It's hard as hell to understand. You have to read it slowly. And The Grand Design by Stephen Hawking. They both tackle the quantum physics part of things, and they're both theoretical physicists.
That is certainly a little bit beyond my brain capacity, probably.
It's a little bit beyond mine, but I still try to read it, and I try to understand as much as I can. But, yeah. My favorite creationist argument against evolution, though, is the... have you ever heard the micro versus macro evolution argument? Like, creationists will cop to the fact that microevolution does happen. Like, there are certain things like bacteria adapt to the antibiotics that we come up with, and they learn how to not be killed from them. They become stronger. But think about it. If we have little swaths of microevolution that are always happening, and you take all of those swaths, make them bigger and bigger and bigger, what does that make it? Macroevolution. It's always happening. It's always happening. That's like saying the inches exist, but feet don't. You get what I'm saying there? It's like they're thinking in inches, but they're not recognizing the feet.
Right.
So, yes, microevolution is constantly happening, but that's the point. There's no difference. There is no micro and macro. It's just evolution happening all the time. Always happening. And because it happens at such a slow rate...
Yeah.
Now, on the smaller scale, it actually varies from species to species how fast, and it has to do with environmental pressures. Look, like the shark has barely changed in all the years because it doesn't have all that environmental pressure to change. It's the king of the fucking ocean, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it doesn't, but you do have some species that have barely changed from the beginning of the time that they evolved into what they are.
Right.
And that's because they haven't needed to. On the other hand, you have humans. Now, we are primates. We've evolved from a common ancestor the same as other primates. And James actually brought up when we had him with us, like,
show number 2.
Yeah, why are we so intelligent? Like, how did we get... You know what? That's you know what it is? It's one of our survival mechanisms. Think about it. When we started walking upright and all that kind of thing, and we actually probably, as compared to some of the other animals that are walking the earth and things like that, weren't quite as physically able as they were. Like, so our brains started to develop through evolution, because genes basically are kind of like, they're taking their environment in, and these genes are like trying to fix things. Like, how do we survive? Because the genes, our bodies are basically like casings for these genes to survive. And those genes want to keep surviving, so they're trying to find ways to make it better, and these mutations start to happen as we're giving birth. So obviously, the more clever of the Homo sapiens in the beginning, when we actually could start to call us Homo sapiens, the more clever of us, and that was going back through Homo erectus and everything else before us, the more clever are the ones who continued to survive. So that's starting to be written into our genetic code. We're getting smarter and smarter and smarter because the smarter of us are starting to survive. We know that we don't have the physical prowess of all of, like, lions and whatever else is these were our predators.
We had to outsmart them.
Yeah. And obviously, the smarter of us are going to be the ones that survive. So more and more and more breeding and breeding and breeding, smarter and smarter and smarter. Do you see? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah.
How does that not make sense to these people?
Because you can't see it. You can't see it happen. I mean, that's
okay. Do they see God?
Damn it!
And you know what else? Another thing about evolution. When I said, "Do you see God?" that kind of sparked this thought in my head, and then it just fucking left.
You had a brain fart again.
I hate that.
Brain fart.
I hate that. Shit.
Spit it out.
It'll come back.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I was on a roll.
we're probably going to come back to this anyway. Should we?
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Sure, sure.
Okay, so we are now at right.
Right wing watch roulette. Yeah.
Oh crap! What was it?
Oh, I'll send it to you since we're doing it from your computer.
Was it the?
I'll send you the particular one that I think is.
Pardon us as we get our shit together.
Yeah, we were supposed to do that. I think that's the one thing as we were preparing that we said we were going to do is get it ready for Right Wing Watch Roulette, and we didn't do it. Okay, there. It's
okay. Now, through the miracle of Facebook, I'll make sure that I. Oh, hold on. I'm not ready to do this yet. You just hold your horses.
You know, Jesus! You know it's going to be good already.
Okay. And then, are we going to get the fun little outro music piece for this?
Sure, why not?
No, I mean, is it the... maybe it's different. Oh, anyway.
Hey,
Right Wing Watch. Let's hit some play here.
Told us very clearly in his word that we are one body and many members. One body and many members. In fact, he said this, not everybody can be an eye, not everybody can be an ear. He said if everybody was an ear, how could the body see? And if everybody was an eye, how could the body taste? And you have thumbs and you have fingers and you have toenails, and some parts of the bodies look better than other parts of the body. But the truth is, we are all members of the same body. I look at what's going on with Pastor Terry Jones down in Florida and the burning of the Korans and the ridicule and all of that stuff that he's getting from Christians for his stand against Islam. Is Terry Jones part of the body? I watch what goes on with the God Hates Fags people out there in Kansas. And I tell you, it doesn't witness to me. I don't want to go out and hold signs that say God hates fags, but are they part of the body? Are they maybe an ugly part of the body that we don't really want to see? And we're so quick in Christianity to say, who are you to judge? Who are you to judge? When we're talking about sinners, yet we are so quick to judge those who are in the church.
Coach Dave Daubenmeier, huh? It's going to go on to another video.
Oh. Yeah.
Coach Dave Daubenmeier. What a rambling fool.
I don't even know that
He's talking about we are all part of the body, the body of Christ. We are all part of it. So if this one part of the body is saying this one thing, since we're all part of it, who are we to judge to say that part of it's wrong?
Okay.
Okay, so basically he's talking about this pastor who's burning Korans.
Uh-huh.
Since they are such a huge threat, the citizens of the United States that are subscribers to the Islamic faith, since they're all terrorists, right?
Right.
So he's going to burn Koran. And then he's talking about Fred Phelps with his God hates fags bullshit. And he's basically defending these people, saying, who are you to judge? Who are you to judge what they're doing?
Judge
is wrong.
Not lest you be judged.
Yeah, I understand what he's going for there, but sir, you have picked two terrible examples. We've got, especially the Phelps family. I mean, these people they're the most negative people on the planet. I mean,
it's almost kind of a, the thing is they keep popping up because they protest at these funerals and whatnot. You get that as kids, our parents tell us, ignore them and they'll disappear.
And you know what? I think that's actually starting to happen. You're hearing less and less about them.
And then you have motorcycle gangs who block them in their hotels so they can't go to the funerals.
Which is awesome.
I hear wonderful stories like that all the time, too.
Well, that guy's just a dunce. So, I don't think there's even much we can say about that. I think he shoots himself in the foot with his own words. I think he illustrates his own stupidity. What else do we have to say? I mean, that's what Right Wing Watch does. I mean, it places people in the spotlight who say really dumb things.
Yeah.
Somebody's mowing their yard.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry if you can hear that.
It's October 20th. Just let it grow.
I think, yeah, they're really pretty good at pointing those things out, especially when you run into situations with like people like Michelle Bachmann, Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, Ted Cruz. These are people who say things. They use their elected post and say things about the end times coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Oof.
I can only.
And Michelle Bachmann, we should be rejoicing that the end times are coming. I mean,
these people wanted us to invade Damascus during the Syrian
because they want Damascus to be destroyed because they think that that's fulfilling some kind of prophecy.
Yes. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, you know, that's really clever of those that penned the Bible, whoever they may have been. Predicting the destruction of a city or any society, that's eventually going to happen, no matter what. I mean, there's going to come a point when that city's not going to exist anymore. It's not difficult. That's not a good prophecy.
Even at that, who's to say the city is going to last? I mean, it doesn't mean a conflict has to happen. It can just be the city dies because there's no resources to keep it alive.
Lord, I pray to you that thousands and thousands upon thousands of innocent people die in this struggle so you can come back and save us.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
What kind of a person? I mean, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and this is okay. We generally try to have a pretty good. We're trying to have a good outline for the show, and we move from topic to topic. And this particular week, I don't know that I really picked out anything specific that I wanted to talk about, other than the fact that yesterday I hung out with my dad for a little while, and I knew that my dad was a Christian. I don't see my dad very often, which is, kind of a bummer. I mean, he's a guy, he obviously had major influence on me and the way that I live my life. I mean, he's a musician. We have a lot of the same interests, sports and whatnot. But I borrowed his truck yesterday so I can get rid of some yard waste. And I get back over to his house and I ran into him. I wasn't expecting it, but, he invited me in the house and my shoes were messy, and I was like, Dad, I probably should get going. I don't want to trample mud all over your floor. Anyway, the conversation just kind of kept going. He invited me in. He's like, it's a kitchen floor. We'll mop it if we have to, okay? Mm-hmm. Whether any of this is any bit of relevant, I don't know. But it got to the point where we just started talking. And I don't know, maybe it's the fact that Dad knows that I have certain positions on things, and he would say one thing and I would just kind of take that as a cue to take it to the next level. I found out yesterday that my dad is a bit of a creationist, which kind of surprised me. I mean, I don't know that I should or shouldn't be. He's not someone who goes to church every Sunday. In fact, I don't know the last time my dad went to church. He's one of those Christian believers who feels that you don't have to go to church to believe in God. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of raised that way within my family a little bit. Yeah. We didn't go to church, but there was the idea that there was a supreme creator kind of deal. And my dad actually believes that we walked with dinosaurs.
See, that's surprising. That's an extreme thought for somebody that doesn't think going to church is necessary, because that's like the fringe, man. That's a big deal to go to church. I mean, that's imperative. I've never heard of somebody who doesn't actually go to church that has that extreme of a position.
Well, we can take this a little bit further. like I say, I think he is. I might say that he's a New Earth creationist, which is interesting because at the same time, oh gosh, how do I go about this? There are many things that just he doesn't care for homosexuality.
Okay.
So we get into this conversation. It goes and goes and goes. We wound up talking for 3 hours, and it just went from one thing to the next. And in the case of homosexuality, we just got to the point where he starts talking about how it's wrong and it shouldn't happen. And I was like, well, okay, Dad, but if that's the case, do you eat pork? Do you handle pork products? How about shellfish? Do you wear clothing of mixed fabric? How many different things are there in Leviticus that? Well, he doesn't have tattoos, but I do believe it says. Is it in Leviticus that says that? No tattoos.
It has it's marking your body and things like that.
Well, I think what I'm getting to the point of is I got to the point where I was like, Dad, you can't pick and choose. Mm-hmm. You're picking one particular part of the Bible, the Old Testament for that matter, and saying that that's not right, but you'll do the other things.
Yeah.
And of course he's kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, it's just immoral. It's immoral because you grew up in a place where it's not something that you do. However, it's not something that's
you should do. You're supposed to do
according to our. Which is thankfully changing, but I mean, at the same time, people have gotten over the shellfish. I mean, people eat this stuff all the time. People, you know what I mean? It's so I just kept getting him on these, and then my favorite one that I got him on was, Dad, when did you decide you were straight? And he goes, I don't know. I mean, maybe 7. I was like, Dad, did you actually say I'm straight? Did you decide that you were straight, or was it just something that felt right? You were attracted to the opposite sex. He goes, well, yeah. It's like, well, don't you think it's possible that could happen with a gay man? I mean, do you think that's a choice? And man, I wish I could bring it all back up to my mind.
He didn't.
I'm having a brain fart.
It's now. Okay. But it sounds like you'd kind of got the wheels turning maybe a little bit in his head.
I would say I definitely got that, and I actually got help from my stepmom on the situation. She was backing me on the idea that she thinks that you're born that way. And he's like, well, how can anybody be born that way? I mean, he mentioned that he had worked with somebody who was gay, and he asked him, well, why are you gay? And he goes, because I'm gay. And he goes, well, have you ever gone out with a woman? And he says, well, no. I was like, well, then how do you know that you're not straight? And I go, well, Dad, have you ever gone out with a man? He goes, no. I was like, well, how do you know you're not gay?
Oh, boy.
So this gets him, at this point in time, I'm like, actually, I've got my hand on his shoulder and I'm telling him this. So I'm like, I don't know if I had this, I'm like this person over him or whatever. I don't know. I was just trying to get a point across to him. And he was stumbling really hardcore. It's like, you can't use these arguments without thinking about the other side.
Right.
It's like, they're people just like us, and they're going to have the same situation. It's something you just go with.
Right.
It's what feels right. It's what feels natural. Who am I to say that you're not gay? I mean, because you've never gone out with a person of the opposite sex. I mean, it's just you went with what was comfortable to you.
Right. Well, it sounds like you guys had a pretty awesome conversation there.
Okay, so it kind of goes on to, I'm going to take this a little bit further and take a cue from another one of our favorite people, Seth from The Thinking Atheist. So big shout out to this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Last week, he had a wonderful podcast where he had 3 different guests, I think, and they were talking about coming out as atheists. My dad is definitely aware that I'm an atheist and I'm a humanist, and he prayed for me yesterday to hope that I would change my ways.
In front of you?
And almost. He's like, well, I'll pray for you. He told me he would pray for me.
Oh, okay.
So
that would have been creepy.
Here's the thing: we're to bring everything that's happened in the last 40 minutes of this show or so back to a point for both of us is the whole point of that podcast was coming out and why we need to come out, and it's as coming out of the closet as being an atheist / humanist, free thinker, skeptic, whatnot. People are afraid of things they don't understand.
Yes.
People are afraid of things they don't understand, and as from what I can tell, there are probably more atheists out there than what we know.
I don't. There's no doubt in my mind.
And we are shining examples of a situation where we're not completely out of the closet when it comes to this.
No.
I mean, we're not even using our real damn names for this podcast.
Yeah. And for me, that the name thing is in the beginning, not only for I'm not ready to go this deep. I think my parents probably have a pretty good idea of where I stand, but not. The other thing is that, I've considered possibly being a teacher. Well, if my name's attached to something like this, what does that do for and that's found, what does that do for my prospects of a job in this area of the country?
Right.
But then again, I may not teach, so I may just go into the field somehow. I didn't realize there were so many jobs available with a biology degree, but that's besides the point. But what you're saying about, I completely agree with. It's kind of like you can compare it to gays coming out of the closet. When you start to realize, hey, I know that person, he's a gay. And these stereotypes about gay people that I'm hearing being just complete deviants and lumping them in with pedophiles and things like that, you realize that's not true. That's not true about those people. And as more and more gay people started coming out, we were aware of, wow, I know more people who are homosexual than I thought I did, and I like these people.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same concept with coming out as a non-believer. When they realize that we're not all cold, unfeeling.
Now, I think we should point out the fact that, in fact, I showed you something that I was prepared to post on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I have not shared it on Facebook yet because there's one little part that I'm not totally comfortable with. And it is the idea that I somewhat compared coming out as an atheist to coming out as lesbian, gay, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 200 years ago, even, go back further, if you came out saying you didn't believe in God, you might have been killed.
Yeah, in certain parts of the world, definitely.
And in fact, it can still happen in certain parts of the world.
Yes, it can.
Now, at the same time, right now, present time, United States, that's not going to happen so much.
No.
Coming out as gay, there's going to be some issues. I mean, in the last 30 years, in my lifetime, numerous people have been murdered, tortured, whatnot, in the United States for being gay.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not they even came out of the closet, there are times where you feel like, that person's got to be gay. We need to teach them a lesson.
Matthew Shepard.
Matthew Shepard is a perfect example.
That long ago. I mean, it was.
So while I say it's important, I understand that it's not. We're not under the oh my God, we're gonna die if we're coming out as atheists. It's more the worry that people will look down on us and we won't have the same abilities to gain a foothold in our lives and be okay. Mm-hmm. There's this whole, we're the least trusted group of people in the country.
Right.
With that idea, Barry Goldwater, which was Nixon's, who was he to Nixon?
Not 100% sure. He was a moderate type Republican. He was one of John McCain's heroes.
I can't think of his exact quote, but basically his state was, when the religious right get a foothold in the conservative party, things are going to go downhill. Mm-hmm. He doesn't trust them, and they're going to start, using their influence to change policy in this country, and it's not going to be good.
Right.
This is something that came out of Goldwater's mouth. Not a perfect quote. Are you looking for the quote?
Oh, yeah, I can.
But this is a conservative. This is a guy who worked under Nixon, and is a conservative, and a lot of people don't care for him on the liberal side. But he made a very good point. Right now, what's happening in this country is you have a lot of people who are very religious, and they're using it in their policy making.
Yes, and that's dangerous.
People who are freaking out because they feel like there's, well, as an atheist movement, we're getting bigger. And people are starting to feel it.
Yeah.
People are being sued by FERF.
Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Yes, to keep things from happening. There's, keep things from, like, a nativity scene being placed on government property.
Mm-hmm.
And things of this nature. And the thing is there are not enough of us who are out in the open about separation of church and state to do something about it. And we should be. We're not going to fix anything if we keep hiding. And there is no way in hell. How many people are there in Congress? I mean, you've got 50. You've got 50 senators and so many congressmen.
Was it like 535 or something like that?
There is no way that all of those people are Christians. There have to be atheists in that group.
Yeah, it's 535.
There have to be atheists in that group. There have to be people who don't believe in God in that group and are trying to make decisions. They may not be talking about it out loud, but this is something that needs to be fixed.
Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, there's a part of me that's... I'm not at all ashamed of who I am and where my beliefs lie. It's that... I don't know if this makes me a coward, but it's that fear of losing the wonderful relationship that I have with my family.
Exactly.
And that fear was not appeased in the slightest when my mom called me out on my evolution,
right.
Acceptance of evolution. And I refuse to use the word belief, because it's not something you believe, it's something you accept, because it's there, it happened.
Uh-huh.
And I told her, when I even used those words to her, I was like, it's acceptance of evolution. It's not a belief.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I've told you how Dad's yelling in the background. My mom said, "Well, I hope you change the way you believe." And my dad's yelling, "Oh, he will, he will," because he's saying, I'm gonna be changing it when I'm burning in hell. Is basically what he's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they have a pretty good idea, because she also asked me, "Well, what do you believe?" That's where I was like, "Oh, well, what do you?" I was like, "Well, the Bible. I think the Bible was written by men,
mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of what it says was very relative to the time they lived in,
right,
and doesn't necessarily apply to us today very much, and
mm-hmm.
it may be a little bit irrelevant after what we've learned, what
right.
we know." So I think they have a good idea that I probably am not a Christian, but I don't think they know that I go so far as to being an atheist. And obviously, I can't say with 100% certainty that there is no God.
No one can.
Right, and anyone who says they can is an idiot. There are idiots on the atheist side.
Yes.
Complete idiots.
Yes.
I've seen a few of them on YouTube, and I'm not going to name names just because I don't want to...
Yeah.
In case we ever do get a nice audience, I don't want to make any enemies, but... It's something that I have to deal with, and something that I will deal with.
Maybe we can look at this as part of, maybe it's a group counseling thing, as all of us together.
Yeah.
We all have to deal with this, but the thing is we have to have conversation, and we can't hide from the conversation.
No.
That's something that's gotten me in the past, and I still remember coming out to my boss. She was asking me some. She wanted to know what my personal thoughts on this relationship that she was having, and it took me a good 10 minutes of stuttering over myself and stumbling to get something out and finally say, I don't believe in God. And because of that, my thoughts are, I am not going to use someone else's, what do I say? My choices are my choices.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to give credit to something that I don't believe exists. I made the choice. If it's a good choice, yay. If it's a bad choice, I'm going to step up and say, yeah, I messed up.
And you're going to learn from it.
Exactly. This is something that we have to talk about. And in fact, let me go ahead and read this Facebook post that I have not made yet,
Okay.
but I plan on. And please, by all means, tell me what you think about it. You can actually email us at beinghumanist.podcast@gmail.com and tell me what you think about what I've written here that I have not yet posted. It's going to start out. I've decided today that I have to come out and say something. A few people in my circle already know this about me, and many may not believe what I am about to say, nor understand what it means for me or others like me to say it. But I am a secular humanist. What does this mean? Is it humanist? Humanist?
Say however you want to say, but I would say humanist, but that's up to you.
Okay, so Kurt Vonnegut, one of Indiana's own,
A treasure,
pretty much nails what it means. Being a humanist means trying to behave decently without expectation of rewards or punishment after you're dead. To a T. I mean, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
The reason I hesitate to put this out in the open, other than the fact that it is written under my religious beliefs in my About section on Facebook and has been for at least a year, is for the fear of how people will look at me. In Indiana, I think this puts me in pretty much the same category as someone coming out as being gay. That is a pretty strong statement, I know, but the reason I say this is that a recent study finds that people like me are the least trusted people in the country, especially in a very conservative and religious state such as Indiana is. Why, you ask? Well, a secular humanist, or free thinker is what I like to call a sugar-coated phrase, and it's easier to hear than the word atheist. There it is, atheist. This will take, I have a link in my post that will take you to a story talking about the above-mentioned study. Now, I'm not going to lie. I have not said this to many people, and I don't think I've ever said it blatantly on Facebook, but it feels good to say, which is what it will feel like when I post it. Now for the very important part. People fear what they don't understand, so I'd like to make it easier. I invite all to ask me questions. If you're friends with me on Facebook, that means that you at least know me. You most likely see the posts I make on a daily basis. I make fairly regular social, political, thought-provoking posts. I'm totally opening up here for all of you. Ask me why I am this way. Many of my closest friends are religious, and we get along great. For those of you who don't know me as well, or are curious as to what it means to be an atheist/humanist, and why I chose to be this way, I cannot stress enough to please ask me about it. I care about people, and I love discussion. I will not tolerate hateful words, so let's keep it friendly. You may be surprised by what you hear. I haven't posted it yet because the gay part.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that I shouldn't reward that. But I think it's very important for us to try to open that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to make things better.
I agree.
And I think that more of us will hear that, and you might discover, as I have, that I have many friends on Facebook that I did not know were the same way I am, because they just don't talk about it.
Yeah. I've actually, just through my science, I post a lot of science stories and things like that.
Right.
Just through posting that, I've gotten some private messages from people that I've learned are atheists that I didn't know that.
Really?
That I went to high school with.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So you're right about that. I mean, we might lose. It's just the preparation of the possibility of losing what's familiar. I think it may have been Seth on the Thinking Atheist who brought up maybe it'll be better for you in the long run because even though you're losing these people in your life, you have these other people who are going to be there waiting for you as a support system.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to think about that, but he's right, and I think that's a great coming out letter, if you want to say it that way. I honestly don't think that you would find I don't know if you're worried on the gay part if you're going to offend a gay person. I don't. Most of the time I've ran across that analogy, I think that the gays are okay with it.
Okay.
For the most part, from what I've seen, but I can't say that for sure. I mean, maybe ask one of your gay friends if
I could do that.
If he or she thinks that would be a.
In fact, I have a couple who follow the Word of God thoroughly, and I've been wanting to ask them about that because you run into so many homosexuals. It's obvious that they've removed themselves from God, but there are a lot who don't, and I always find it interesting when you can have something as blatantly as Leviticus and people all around you saying that it's evil, it's bad, God doesn't like it, yet you're still believing.
That is a testament to the sheer power of indoctrination.
Oh.
I mean, you've got a religion with a book that is basically demonizing your very being, and you're still clinging to that. Why? How do you do that? I mean, I can understand still believing, maybe being spiritual and still believing in some kind of a higher power that watches over us, but why cling to that dogma? How can you do that once you realize I'm gay? You're saying that, I mean, I can't change this about myself. I was born this way, but this book that I'm supposed to subscribe to is telling me that I'm an abomination to my Creator.
Mm-hmm.
He created me this way, but I'm an abomination to him.
Right.
How can you cling to that?
You know what? I may have to bring one of the guys on. We may have to bring him on and have a conversation.
I think so. And
it'll be interesting.
I'd be interested to hear, like, how you can stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why that religion? The one that, be a Buddhist or something. I mean, but even Buddhists say it's not natural. I mean, they don't have like sin, but yeah.
Of course, Buddhist isn't a religion either. It's a
philosophy
of life.
There are some of them that are getting close to being religious about it with the fighting with the Muslims.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's not cool.
But I have actually heard some Buddhists on some of these. I don't know exactly where I saw it, but there was a Buddhist monk that they were speaking with about homosexuality, and he disagrees with it, and he thinks it's unnatural, and he thinks it's because the Buddhist philosophy is to continue the life cycle. But give me a break.
You know, in that same regard, though, not all atheists think that homosexuality is good. You know,
yeah.
I mean, you're gonna find people. Not all atheists are the same.
No, it's true.
The reason our show is called Being Humanist, in my mind, is that we have a really open mind. We care about people, and we believe that if it makes you happy, then it's okay.
Yeah.
As long as it's not hurting someone.
Now, yeah, and humanism and atheism kind of they are different things, really. They go hand in hand, like, but you can be an atheist and not necessarily be a humanist. I mean, there are a lot of apathetic atheists out there who just don't believe because they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in it.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of people who are just grossed out by homosexuality, and that's
the root of it. You don't see it.
Yeah. That's the root of it all, and I think that's the people that are so fervent in attacking it on the religious side of things are grossed out by it, and they feel, I got this to back my argument, and you can't do anything to me because this is my religious freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say anything about what I'm saying, or it's persecution. So I can hate these people all I want. I don't have to be tolerant of your hate of them just because you have a religious belief. And I won't be. Never.
Yeah. So there.
Damn straight.
Excuse me. Well, I think we're pretty close to the end here.
Yeah.
we would love to hear your input on this because I think it's very important. I mean, we really need to get out there. People need to understand what we are so they don't fear us. It's amazing that we can be least trusted over, especially in the United States, with how Muslims are looked at. It's like we're least trusted than Muslims.
Yeah, you know, all those atheist terrorist attacks that have happened. I mean, I'm not saying Muslims. I'm playing on their irrational fear.
Yes, yes.
Like they think Muslims terrorism. They put those two things together.
Yes. Which is certainly not the case because there's just as crazy Christians as there are Muslims.
Exactly, who have bombed abortion clinics and
yes, Oklahoma City bombing.
Right.
That was a Christian. But you know, I know Muslims, and there are many Muslims in our culture who you can tell are peace-loving people.
Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, yes, the Muslim people should be respected. But I have no more respect for the Islamic faith than I do the Christian faith.
Exactly.
I think it's as absurd, maybe more. I think there's a lot, maybe not more, but there is a lot of allusion to violent acts in their book as much as the Bible. I mean, let's just call them equally absurd. That's going to piss a lot of Christians off. They are equally absurd.
They are equally absurd, and then there's a lot of picking and choosing on what we'll pretend that we agree with or whatever. So I think we're about to end the show, but before we do that, we want to remind one, there's a few websites that we'd like people to check out that I think are necessary. One is theskepticsannotatedbible.com.
Always fun.
You can, any argument people say, you know, it's a really good resource to go check out.
Right.
AmericanHumanist.org, which is fantastic just to see what's going on in the country and where there are issues with separation of church and state and just good things that humanists, atheists are doing and where the church is attacking us and whatnot. There's all kinds of stories like that. You also wanted to put out that there was a website called...
it's a blog by Phil Plait, Bad Astronomy.
I'm sure you can probably Google search bad astronomy and find it. But
sure.
It's slate.com/blog/bad_astronomy.html.
Right. Basically, it's Phil Plait kind of attacking and blowing the lid off of pseudoscience. And I'm not saying that every atheist is completely enamored with science, but it is let's just face it, a lot of us are. And I just think that if you're interested in truth, and not truth necessarily, but interested in the way the world works and blah, 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 there are all kinds of theories that are floated out there. Well, let's not call them theories. One of these episodes, I'm going to get into that difference between theory and conversational and in the scientific definition. But anyway, he likes to blow the lid off of some false science, and because people need to be informed of what's really accepted and what's not.
And lastly, we'll promote ourselves before we go off to this last clip. Email us again, beinghumanist.podcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook as well. Let's see if I can... Oh my gosh, how can I not remember it? It should just be facebook.com /beinghumanist. Yeah, facebook.com/beinghumanist.podcast, which will take you to our Facebook page. And right now, we have no likes.
Well, we haven't really promoted the Facebook.
Yeah, we have no likes. Of course, we haven't liked it either because based on our conversation, we haven't totally come out in the open, and we don't want... There's that... we don't necessarily want to be connected with it yet.
Well, that's the Facebook, you know, because your grandma and your mom and your
exactly.
aunt, and everybody has to be on Facebook.
So we're looking for likes, but then we're also on YouTube, same way, and you can also find us on iTunes. You can find our podcast on iTunes. Just search for Being Humanist in the podcast store.
Right.
Anything you want to add before we push play?
No, let's just maybe make sure there's not going to be an ad that starts before the...
Oh, that would be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because we want to make sure that we're going out. So maybe mute the... Did you...
Okay, yeah, it's muted.
And the clip is in your messages.
Yeah, I'm going back there. we're still figuring this thing out. Leave us alone.
Stupid ads.
Yeah.
I understand. You have to get paid. Maybe one of these days we'll have ads before our...
Hey, look, no ad. Yeah, hey, I wouldn't mind getting paid for things on Facebook.
And just before you play this...
YouTube.
Right, exactly. Before you play this, we're going out with Sir David Attenborough. And the question that was asked to him is, why do you not credit God?
I'm already looking forward to this. I have not listened to this, so you're with me.
Have a good one, guys. Keep thinking.
Please, please think for yourselves.
I often get letters, quite frequently, of people say how they like your programs a lot, but I never give credit to the almighty power that created nature. To which I reply and say, well, it's funny that the people when they say that this is evidence of Almighty, always quote beautiful things. They always quote orchids and hummingbirds and butterflies and roses. But I always have to think, too, of a little boy sitting on the banks of a river in West Africa who has a worm boring through his eyeball, turning him blind before he is 5 years old. And I reply and say, well, presumably the God you speak about created the worm as well. And now I find that baffling to credit a merciful God, that action. And therefore, it seems to me safer to show things that I know to be truthful and factual, and allow people to make up their own mind about the moralities of this thing, or indeed the theology of this thing. I mean, we made a film about chimps hunting monkeys. That was an extraordinary and powerful and alarming and dismaying thing to see. They've got one. The hunters are tearing it apart. Again, people say, how can you put on such savagery of a predator catching prey? And you are milking it for violence. If they saw what you put out on the cutting room floor of this animal in suffering, I mean, it's a very narrow line.